Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video I thought I'd give you guys a look at the final resting place of the Lightning Arrow Artillery Ballista Ranger. It has served its purpose well, and it is now going to be moving on to the next stage of its evolution. However, that stage is not for everyone, so I wanted to make sure I covered in detail how everything went, and also, you know, what's wrong with the character, what's good about the character, and how to get to the point where I am now, and also what it's kind of like doing in terms of the content. So I figured I'd show you a map, and we'll talk a little bit about what this character is good at farming, and also, you know, about all the gear and acquisition and stuff like that. So overall, I would say this character is a fantastic second character if you've got some money lying around and you're interested in mapping as a strategy kind of content, especially if you've got all your void stones already. It's also a fantastic league starter. However, you do need to make sure you focus on making sure you can upgrade your bow consistently throughout the story, and then multiple times in maps, lying and moving up to the bow that I have and we'll talk about in this video here. So you can see here that it's pretty effective at doing the clear. And you know, it gets through stuff pretty well. But its real strength is in doing legions and things like deliriums and stuff like that. Overall, that's really where it's very much going to shine. Oh, we don't want to do the Forbidden Sanctum right now. So we're going to knock out this little guy here. So you'll notice I just put my totems down whenever there's a reasonably durable rare. And that's going to really fix that up for us. So on the chromatic there. Basically, I just want to find you a legion, guys, and kind of show you what the character looks like with the gear level that I've got right now, and then you guys can kind of emulate it on your own characters, and then be able to farm up a ton of currency, because this character is good. It's one of the best at farming some of the most powerful mechanics, which got buffed this league. And you can see here that we're smashing the Legion. So in general, the way to handle Legions is you always want to put your totems on both of the big packs of rares, and they'll basically just gun them down. And if you're not familiar with what the build does, or you're kind of new to any of this, you can check out my other videos, and that'll really cover you, and you'll be able to, you know, check all that out and have a good time. So there you go, you can see it's knocked all out. I don't even know what the map mods are actually on this map, but hopefully they're not too tanky. But what I'll do is I'll give you guys a look at the boss damage without inspired learning on, and the buffs, because I think that it's pretty important to understand kind of like what you've got working here on the single target department. So we can click. We'll just have to wait these few seconds here, and then I'll show you guys the boss, and then you know, we'll jump out and we'll talk a little bit more about the character and give you guys a bit of a lowdown of what you can need for this kind of a clear and this kind of a farming beast. All right, so here's the boss. Basically, just put your totems down whenever you got the boss. Make sure you got the curse up, and you know, down he goes. You know, pretty good single target damage. Definitely not too bad. Don't even have my flasks up right now. You know, for a mapper, it's got pretty respectable single target damage. I did my own Exile, my own Eater, and I did Shaper, all deathless. Well, not all deathless. So I did the Shaper deathless, but you know, overall, it's a pretty reasonable starter. It can get through the void stones if you know what you're doing, and it's also a fantastic character for being on the receiving end of having those void stones, and of course, you know, being pretty strong. Alright, so let's get into the gear. I want to give you guys a bit of a lowdown on how to get to the point where I am now, kind of launching off the last video and talking a little bit about what I upgraded to get the character to where it is now, and kind of what you need to do to get it to a position where it can effortlessly farm T16 Legions. And it's also very, very good at farming 60% Delirium maps in T16s as well, which is a very lucrative strategy as well, which we did use to get quite a lot of currency for this belt that's in my inventory right now. So both of those strategies are premier, very strong, and it's very good at doing them. So let's go over the upgrades which I made since the last video and really talk about the sticking points of the build, what worked and what didn't. All right, so overall, the things that have changed since the last video are that I've upgraded my bow to a fractured multi-mod bow. I've also got a +2 helmet here. I've got a chest piece with chaos resistance and life, as well as attributes. The mana reservation actually doesn't do anything. In addition to that, I also crafted some avoid ailment boots, and those are pretty much most of the upgrades. Now on my tree I currently have only one inspired learning. I sold the other one to make a little bit of money, but overall 2 inspired learning is great as well. We're only using 1 for that clear that you saw back there, guys. In addition to that, I am currently using Storm Shroud, although you don't need it. It may be useful in the future. So, you know, it's a pretty interesting jewel, but I'm sure we'll talk about that in future videos. But it does help you get around some avoid ailment issues here and there. if you want to look into that avenue. All right, so overall, that's kind of where the character is. Everything else is pretty much what I had in the previous video. So those few upgrades really do elevate the character from, you know, kind of mediocrity a little bit to all the way to a map blaster. You're going to be able to blast with the best of them, and it's not too expensive. The only real mandatory upgrade that I made here was the bow and the helmet. The helmet is going to increase your single target substantially. It needs to be on a dexterity base so that you can keep getting your suppression mastery here. But overall, it's a really nice pickup. And then the bow, obviously, when I equipped this thing, in PoB it said I was going to do 41% more damage, but it doubled my tooltip damage. And the reason for that is that if you're using an Imperial bow, which I'm sure most people who are playing the build currently are, because it's very cheap and easy to get your hands on, it doesn't have a whole lot of crit. And crit is really important for bow builds. You can't get a whole lot of it consistently without having a high base crit bow, and that is exactly this. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how to craft the bow. So the bow is going to be pretty easily crafted if you can get your hands on a fractured spine bow base. So a fractured spine bow base can be picked up off Path of Exile trade. It's not too easy to acquire through self-crafting. You'd have to fracture yourself with a fracturing orb, and that's just not worth it. So you'll have to buy it off someone who drops it from, you know, monsters, effectively, which does mean that the supply of them is somewhat limited. However, it's well worth investing in one of them if you can get it. So what you're looking for is a tier 2 or higher fire, elemental, or cold roll on the prefixes. It can be any of them, and it needs to be 82, item level 82 plus, preferably, on a spine bow base. And once you have that, it's actually relatively simple to craft the bow. The next step is to use shrieking or deafening essences and spam it until you receive another higher elemental roll. So if you use shrieking essences of hatred, you'd be looking for a high electrical roll or lightning roll, which is what I have here. And then after that, assuming you don't have 3 suffixes, if you do, you have to annul and hopefully you don't remove a prefix. If you don't have 6 affixes total, you go prefixes can't be changed, which costs 2 divines. You scour it, and then you use multi-mod, which costs 2 divines here at 4 total, and then you just craft on the attack speed and the crit and strength and intelligence, and then the bow is done. So it's generally probably going to be about a 6 to 8 divine bow total, but once you do have it, it's going to make the character feel substantially better, and that really is the primary difference between, you know, kind of yellow, early reds dominance to full T16 endgame dominance. Getting this bow is really what it's all about. And then you obviously have the option to link it with normal fusings traditionally, or you can use the risky tainted fusing method, which involves corrupting the bow with a beast, and then you're fusing it with tainted fusings and jewelers, which is the route I went with because it was significantly cheaper at the time, but it is definitely not something you need to do. You can use the normal fusing orbs. Everything else here is pretty stock standard. I have my taming, I have my death rush, which is in the original build, I have my Hyries, I have my poised prism still, even though it's a 1C unique, and then, you know, I've got a Stygian still. We've got a pretty nice searching eye here, but it's mainly there for a bit of damage. And then the only other thing I have here is the Shadows and Dust with a frenzy charge, you know, which is, you know, pretty all right, but, you know, it's definitely not needed. This chest is completely optional. You do not need it at all. You can use pretty much any chest with, you know, the crafted avoid ailment on it or something along those lines, and you'll be just fine. All right, so the other difference is I do have these boots, and of course in combination with a chest, you know, you'll see here that I have avoid ailment on the implicit here, which is going to, when combined with a chest, give me an additional over 30% avoid ailment, which when added with the raid is 50%, and the 20% from thick skin gives me a 100% chance to avoid ailments. Now this will allow you to use determination. Determination is going to make you substantially tankier against physical hits, and it's going to make you, like, you know, be able to get pretty invested and high in the experience department. I actually ended up leveling up in 60% delirious content on this character, which in my opinion is a first, for me at least, because, you know, I generally play pretty squishy characters, and this one certainly didn't end up being that way. So, you know, that's pretty damn nice. If you're looking for like a pretty zoomy character with, you know, medium bulk, you know, this one can be maybe one to look into. In terms of the originally planned Deadeye swap, overall I decided it wasn't actually the correct path to take, for me at least, and that is because you would lose substantial single target damage as well as quality of life, and you'd need need to invest heavily in your gear to overcome that and become the Deadeye. So instead of that, what I decided to do was actually, in fact, pick up an Awakened Chain support. An Awakened Chain support essentially gives you one of the biggest and most alluring parts of Deadeye, which is the +1 chain, which really helps with your clear on a support gem. And I believe right now it costs about 1.5 to 2 divines, and it definitely does make the clear skill on the Raider substantially better. Now, of course, you're not going to have as many projectiles as a Deadeye. That is a bit of a downside. But overall, the defenses, the utility, the single target damage of the Raider more than makes up for it, in my opinion. And it definitely does feel like a better all-rounder. And you can spend your points elsewhere on the tree, like getting even more defenses like here, or even more damage if you wanted to go and get that as well. In addition to that, in hindsight, I have seen the efficacy of the pure artillery ballista build that Firegrass was playing. You can check out his video there. That, if you are a enjoyer of totems, does seem to be a pretty good playstyle as well. If you want to skimp on the lightning arrow a little bit and focus more on the totems and maybe get a little bit more defensive, that can also be an effective playstyle as well. He was also doing very well in 60% delirium as well, keeping pace even with my lightning arrow build. And it can use all of the same tricks and bells and whistles as this build. You know, he was running double inspired as well. Overall, it's just a more totem focused playstyle. So you know, kind of focus more on supporting your totems, making sure they're well placed, and it's a little bit less on the able to like kill packs directly kind of direction there. I would say that Fires is a little bit better at doing bossing and, you know, the Guardians and stuff like that, and Cirrus if you wanted to do that, and mine's probably a little bit better at doing stuff like Legions, but when it comes to stuff like Delirious content, which is just, you know, kind of just like you gotta truck through those health bars, you know, they're pretty similar and they're pretty equal. Okay, overall, I think the character performed excellently. I'll talk a little bit more about what it takes to get started, and, you know, if you wanted to go for a second build, kind of what kind of a budget you'd want to have. So overall, I would say that my character right now, excluding the chest, right, I would say my character is probably worth, you don't need this jewel, approximately 20 divines is what I would say is probably worth right now. With everything added up, I would say it's probably in that ballpark, again, excluding the chest. So the bow is probably about 8 to 10. I see people try and sell them for 14, but that's because they're trying to sell it for a premium. If you craft it yourself, it's probably going to be 8 to 10. The taming's about, you know, 50C, if that. A Death Rush, if you want 3 seconds, is, I believe, 3 divines. If you want 2 seconds, they're 100C. You can just use the 2-second one. It's pretty cheap. 1C for the Shadows and Dust, 1C for the Highest Truth, 1C for the Poised Prism. I don't know how much the Helmet enchant is. It could be about 1 to 2 divines. And then Avoid Ailment boots are basically, you know, just an implicit away on any pair of boots you would like, and then 1 craft on a chest away, and you are ailment immune, and then you can run Determination to boot. So I think that most people enjoying the build are, you know, having a good time. The only thing which I, you know, notice most is people, you know, maybe trying to struggle to get over that T16 hump of really smashing them by crafting up the spine bow. You know, obviously investing 8 divines in a bow to get really, truly immensely powerful is a bit of a hurdle, but once you get over that, you are pretty much good to go. Could you do bossing after you get the bow? Probably, actually. It's definitely a pretty adept bosser after you get Determination and stuff like that on, but that leads me to its primary weakness, and that is its reliance on a health flask. So overall, the build doesn't have any regeneration, which is definitely a pretty reasonable flaw, and it also relies on life tap currently to overcome its mana cost issues, which is just inherent to all attack skills. So you're going to be spamming your abilities here, which is going to eat up your life total, and then the only thing you have to recover that is a life flask. Now, this is a little bit of an issue on boss fights and extended map boss fights when they've got really bad and tanky mods, and that is definitely something that people have raised. Now, in terms of solutions to this, obviously more gear is always going to help. If you swap over to Tornado Shot with life gain on hit, you know, that solves itself. You know, if you kind of go for more life leech, that solves itself. But the thing that probably is easiest to get your hands on is actually probably putting Stone Golem in your casting damage taken setup here. So if I have a socket here, I can put in Stone Golem. In addition to that, you probably also want to pick up the Life Mastery down here, which gives you 2% life regeneration while moving. In addition to that, you can also take Relikesh, I believe, Rislatha, sorry, which gives you a life regeneration flask, an ability to recuperate some of its charges, which is pretty damn handy. Failing that, obviously you can also invest even more heavily in Leech here, or you can even socket on life gain on hit to your lightning arrow, or if you want to go for a more bossing setup, frenzy setup on bosses to give you a bit of sustain on bosses that way as well. So overall, there certainly are options and things that you can do to kind of counter that nasty degen. In addition to that, if you do manage to get a little bit of mana reservation efficiency on a helmet or a chest piece, you can then also fit in vitality, which will also give you a bit of help. Now, to clarify, this isn't an issue at all throughout the maps, like stuff like legions and delirium and all sorts of stuff like that. It's not a problem. It's only when it's you versus the boss and you don't have a flask charges available, and that's kind of when you start getting whittled down while you don't have any health. But the things that I suggested there should help you out and really set you up for success, I hope. And if there's any other ideas that you guys have for the build, let me know. So overall, league start potential, well, I think it's probably the best one I've league started yet. It's been pretty fantastic. It's been good to me, and it's served its purpose well. It's been able to do all the content on a pretty reasonable budget. It's certainly cheaper than Corrupting Fever ever was at league start for me, because it doesn't have a reliance on too many Eldritch implicits. The only one it really needs is this one here, the Avoid Ailments to set up Determination, and then you get to run your double defensive auras. So with all that said, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this journey of Lightning Arrow and Artillery Ballista. I'm definitely probably going to check it out next league as well, and maybe someone will make a guide on it, maybe. We'll have to see. But from here on out, I'm going to be upgrading this in a pretty expensive way. As you can see here, we have the belt, and it's probably going to be pretty hard to follow along for a lot of people, but will probably be more entertainment value for you guys to see where the build goes from here. And then we're obviously going to be focusing on the farming stuff and also the Sanctum stuff, so make sure you stay tuned to that. My purpose is now to make you guys as much currency as possible, so stay tuned for that. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to chuck a like. If you didn't, leave me some feedback down below and a thumbs down. Until next time, cheers.